Hey guys, welcome back to the Secure Code Review series for beginners. I'm Muqsit, and in this episode, we'll be looking at remote command injection vulnerabilities. Similar to the previous videos, in this video, we'll be looking at the different techniques and approach to finding remote command injection vulnerabilities in the source code. We'll also be exploiting this vulnerability in the code, and most importantly, towards the end of the video, we'll be seeing how to fix this vulnerability in the code. So let's get started. I have this Python web application source code in front of me, which allows users to ping a specific host of their choice at the /ping endpoint. To ping a specified host, the user has to visit the /ping endpoint and make a GET request and also provide a host name in the host parameter. But now, since you've watched all the previous videos, I'm sure you must be aware that this source code has a existing vulnerability inside it. So the existing vulnerability is none other than remote command injection vulnerability. If you look at line 8, we are using the host parameter, which is user supplied. Without checking what the user input is, we've provided it to the ping command at the 11th line over here. And finally, we are executing the command using the popen function of the OS module and storing the result in the result variable. So let's try to run this application. As usual, we visit the local host on port 5000, but in this case we need to visit the /ping endpoint. So we go to the /ping endpoint and we provide the host parameter which we had mentioned in our code on line 8. So host equals to google.com, and we hit enter. We notice that this program is pinging google.com through its host parameter. So now let's try to exploit this from an attacker's point of view. Inside the host, we provide google.com as its value, and we use a semicolon to end the command over there, and we type ls. We hit enter. If you're not aware, the semicolon is used to separate commands, so anything before and after that will be treated as two separate commands and will be executed sequentially after the first command has been executed. As we hit enter, we get the ping command's output as expected. However, after that, as we had mentioned, a semicolon, which is basically a separator, the command after the semicolon was ls, which is used to list out the files in the current working directory, and we get the output after the ping command's output. So we see rce.-fix.py, rce.py, which is in fact the current working directory of this application. Let's try to run some other command. Let's try to see the different processes which are running. If we want to execute the etc password file, we type cat etc password and we get the output over here. You can see how critical this vulnerability is. Once an attacker comes across a remote command injection vulnerability, or if you come across this vulnerability during bug bounties or during a pen test assessment, I'm sure you would be on 7th heaven, because there's nothing more beautiful as seeing the output of cat etc password being executed like how we saw right now. Anyway, let's get back to our code. So if you're performing a secure code review on a code base, and if you want to look for remote command injection vulnerabilities, as discussed previously, always focus on looking at important and critical functionalities which the application has to offer. If you notice that a user supplied input is being involved in executing a system level command, make sure you review that code extensively. Common places to look for these would be API calls, functionalities which probably invoke system commands, system services. Another way would be to search the codebase for methods or functions which execute system commands. So since we are using Python, the functions which execute system commands, os.popen like we saw above. Another function of the OS module would be to search for os.system functions. You could also look for subprocess.popen or maybe subprocess.run, and another function could be exec. So you could search for these functions in the code, or maybe if you come across these functions, it would be highly advisable to extensively review the code which are using these kind of functions, because there's a high chance that the user supplied input would not be validated properly and you could find another remote command injection vulnerability over there. So now let's look at the code where we fix this vulnerability. So to fix this, we've deployed a very simple and minimal regex check to validate host names. But before going ahead, I want to point out that the fix shown in this vulnerability is not the final fix, but for the sake of this video, we've deployed this regex check in order to not complicate the video more, to keep it simple for demonstration purposes and for the users. If you want a proper fix and remediation guide to avoid being vulnerable to remote command injection vulnerabilities, OWASP has a good guide to close these vulnerabilities. I'll drop a link to that in the description below. So as spoken about earlier, we've deployed a simple regex check to validate if the host parameter contains host names and IP addresses only. So once we do the regex check, our code will only accept valid host names and IP addresses. So if we scroll down, we will see the subprocess.check output function, which will also help us to execute this command safely. Now let's run this piece of code and see if the vulnerability exists or not. So python 3 rc-fix.py, we open the application, use google.com. Let's see if it accepts a semicolon and another command after that. So it throws as a bad request in the response and it says that the host is invalid. So our commands are basically blocked and only valid host names and IP addresses are accepted. So to summarize everything, we saw how remote command execution vulnerabilities arise in code. We saw how to find them during a secure code review. We also saw how to exploit them. And finally, most importantly, we saw how to fix them. Although the fix is not the final one and there are other fixes which are available, but for the sake of this video, we've kept it simple. So that is it for this video. I hope you've been learning a lot from the secure code review series. I insist that you share this video with as many people as you can. Drop a like on this video and hit the subscribe button and also the bell icon to not miss the upcoming videos in this series. Again, share this video with all your friends. Share it on Twitter, Discord, Reddit, wherever you feel comfortable. The more support this video gets, more such videos we'll be coming up with in the future. Our goal over here is to get as technical as possible and understand things at a very base level. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next video where we'll be tackling another server-side critical issue in the secure code review series.